So as always, let's talk about how we're going to get started with writing this. There is a version in the directory that you can find solution 1. And if I just run solution 1, we see that with no inputs at all, it's going to print this blank board with the cells numbered 1 to 9, not 0 to 8. And it's going to, after it prints the board, it's going to print that there's no winner because there isn't. So that's the default for the program, and it's not very interesting. So we have to add some options here. One is to be able to pass in a -b or -- board option, and everything on the command line that we get has to be a string. So we can't really pass in some really complex data structure here. We're going to pass this in as an argument, so it's got to be a string. So I just decided that the string would be composed entirely of X's and O's for our two players, and then the dot to represent an open cell. You could have used a dash or some other letter or an underscore, but here I'm just using a dot. And these need to be there need to be exactly 9 characters to represent the 9 cells of the board. So for instance here I'm showing that if I pass in x dot o, what that means is that the cell 1, x, is going to be an x. And here we see if we number these 1 to 9 that the x is in position 1, in position 2 is a dot, so that's an open cell. And instead of showing nothing, I'm going to show the number of the cell. Here 3 is occupied by an O, and so the third cell of the grid here is going to be an O, and so forth all the way to the end of the string. So if I try to pass this in, let's go back and run solution 1 with this as the board. We see it does indeed print, let me make this a little bigger, x20450, just like shown here. Still there's no winner, and of course that could be -- board as well. So if this is not exactly 9 characters composed of X's, O's, and dots, we're going to have to figure that out because we don't want to try to continue with an invalid board. Let me just remove one of the characters here, and we see that it's rejected because we can't represent the board with only 8 characters. Likewise, if I put in here something like the letter G, again, that's not a valid. So we're going to have to figure out how way to validate the board. Additionally, we might pass in a cell and a player. So for instance, if we go back to our initial board where there's nothing, and we might want to pass in that cell 1 is going to be occupied by player X. And now we see that cell 1 is indeed occupied by player X. But there's still no winner, of course, no winner. And so, and then finally, if there is a winner, like here we're going to say that the 3 X's, there are 3 X's in a row on the top. We should be able to detect that as well. So, and we see here that X has 1. It may also be the case, for instance, that, maybe let's say this first one is empty, and we say we want cell 1 to be taken by player X, and the board has been modified, and then it determines that X is 1. So any combination of these we're going to have to be able to handle. So given some state and a player and a cell, we're going to show the grid and the outcome. For instance, if there are no inputs, we're just going to show the default board. But if the state has been set to this, player is X and cell is equal to 3, then it's going to show 3 across the top and X is 1. So that's what we're going to that's what we're trying to program. So let's talk about practically how we're going to make that happen.